current stages of the Blue Lock manga, each character is currently evolving at a rapid rate for a chance to be crowned as the champions of the new Egoist League. However, within this clump of evolution, you have one character who seems to have become a cancer to his team, stunting his own awakening and development. That character being Alexis Ness. As of the latest chapter, many people have been criticizing Ness by his actions and devotion to Kaiser, calling him a Kaiser glazer, a waste of a player, totally irrelevant and useless. But I feel like some people truly don't understand his character, and that when you really address it, Ness is actually one of the most well-written characters in all of Blue Lock. In today's video, I'll be breaking down the writing of Alexis Ness, highlighting what makes him such an interesting and well-written character. Now before I can go into the breakdown, I do need to leave a spoiler warning for the latest chapters of the Blue Lock manga, being chapter 289, and if you are not caught up to this point in the series, I would suggest clicking off this video now if you wish to not be spoiled. Now as of the latest events of chapter 289, Ness has actually been perceived to be a cancer to Bastard München. This is thanks to his irrational and illogical plays provided by his obsession with Kaiser. But why is Ness acting like this? It doesn't make any sense. Well, it kind of does when you look at his character arc throughout the series. Let's start by taking a look at his backstory as a child. Ness was born into a family of scientists who fully believe in all things provable by science and despise and disapprove of fanatical thinking. He, on the other hand, was obsessed with all things fantasy and magic. From his mother and father to brother and sister, they berated him constantly due to his belief and passion of magic. This eventually led Ness to being emotionally neglected, being completely abandoned in relation to his dream, creating this mindset that he and his dream are simply alone. Now you may consider this to be an overreaction, but you need to think about it from Ness's perspective here. Ness is simply a kid, and as a kid, we all believed in these fanatical things. Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, David Hasselhoff, all fantasy originated things that we can disprove with science. However, as a kid, we all believed in them. However, that privilege as a child was not given to Ness, even as his family spoke bluntly to him, caring not for his feelings, further pushing him into mental and emotional isolation. Anyone who believes in such unexplainable things has no place here. For simply being a kid, Ness was outcasted by his family. However, this changed for Ness after learning about soccer and believing to him that this was a place where magic truly exists outside the realm of science. This is what led him to associate the two things together, forming a new belief that he can create magic through the participation of football. However, despite this more realistic and acceptable hobby, his family continued to disregard his passions or even him as a person. He was emotionally disowned from those he was closest to. Despite this though, Ness, through practice and determination, became someone who could cast a spell on the whole world through his plays as an athlete. For the first time in his life, Ness finally felt accepted as a fantastical player. This eventually led to him reaching a level at which he could apply for one of Germany's top soccer clubs, Bastard München. However, Ness's magic soon became useless in the face of overwhelming despair. Those on his team were unable to read his imagination and complete his plays, and those he faced were too difficult to defeat on his own. He learned that the magic he has honed till now is simply not enough to take on the world. His dreams and values began to shatter as the words of his family that he continued to ignore began to echo throughout his mind. There's no such thing as magic. Shut up. Anyone who believes in such unexplainable things has no place here. Stop it, you good for nothing. Magic doesn't exist. Give up, dummy. You're worthless, Ness. Stop trying. Magic isn't real. Maybe they're right. I don't believe in— Hey, you shitty small fry. Do you believe in the impossible? The long flowing blonde hair. Those piercing blue eyes. Who is this person? For some reason, Ness's anxiety and fear vanished in an instant, because for once, he felt like the source of magic on the field was directly in front of him. When Kaiser and Ness had first met, it was at the lowest point in Ness's life. He had truly begun to give up on the magic of football. However, with Kaiser's existence on the pitch, Ness felt like he had a chance to prove to himself that his magic can echo across the world stage. And so, he decided to put his faith into Michael Kaiser. 1, 2, and 3 goals. Kaiser and Ness together were able to conquer Bastard München. This was the start of the eventual unhealthy relationship between these two characters. However, it didn't always start out that way. Ness and Kaiser spent over 4 years together, believing that they had found an actual friend in each other, playing together and pursuing their shared dream of being the best in the world. Over the years, trust was built between these two characters, seen with Kaiser allowing for Ness to cut his hair. While it may seem minuscule to you, this is actually incredibly huge and massive given what we know about Kaiser's trauma in relation to physical intimacy. Not just for Kaiser though, this is also huge for Ness. Because of the emotional neglect that Ness had faced as a child, he couldn't help but attach himself emotionally to Kaiser. I mean, Kaiser was the first person to not only understand and believe in his dream, but also foster a dream that they could pursue together. This is what is called in psychology, or in science, as anxious attachment. Anxious attachment is caused by inconsistent parenting or other early experiences of emotional hunger. It can manifest in interpersonal relationships, such as feeling unworthy of being loved, or forgetting personal needs in favor of a partner's needs. And this is something prominently shown with Ness's character. And we see this on numerous occasions that despite being talked down to, or literally having water splash in his face, Ness doesn't seem to care. He was already emotionally neglected, so to even be acknowledged even in this negative context, Ness doesn't mind that much, because at least he's still being acknowledged. So in regards to the latest chapters of the manga, Kaiser telling Ness to give up on football is actually the correct thing to say in this instance, especially for Ness's character development. But why is that the case? Before I explain, if you are enjoying this video so far, leave me a like and subscribe down below to see more awesome Blue Lock content just like this. I also have a Discord server called the Neo Egoist Geeks, which you should totally join. But looking at Ness's recent performances, they are very much so lacking in relation to him at the beginning of the NEL. And with the latest chapter, yes, it's fair to say that Ness is actually sabotaging Bastard München's current development. However, you need to understand why Ness is acting this way before you say that he is a useless character and should be benched. Ness had to deal with Kaiser's increasingly abusive actions for almost 4 years straight, and after being completely ignored and emotionally disowned, it's no wonder that Ness is still loyal to Kaiser even after everything that happened. Getting attached is literally a response to trauma and realistically cannot be helped. It happens all the time in abusive relationships, and that aspect is being portrayed in the story. What many fans of Blue Lock fail to understand is that while Blue Lock is a sports manga, it is also a psychology manga. The story tackles topics that actual athletes and players have experienced before, such as abusive relationships, death and grief, and career-altering injuries. That's why backstories have been such a prominent thing, especially in the NEL. Even the core value of Blue Lock, of following one's ego, is a psychological topic. And this is only further supported through backstories, as this is what shapes a player's ego and decisions going into Blue Lock. So in relation to everyone saying backstory München or complaining about the backstories, the characters who are getting these backstories are some of the most well-written characters in the entire show. I get that you only are here for the soccer aspect, but you need to understand the narrative importance of the backstories that you read. If you can't understand that, then maybe Blue Lock isn't the series for you. But given everything we know about Blue Lock, how could Alexis Ness become a prominent character again? Before I explain, I have seen the interview with Kaneshiro and Nomura saying that Ness is not going to be doing anything else in this game. However, I don't necessarily want to take this at face value, because given that this is a psychology adjacent manga, you need to look deeper into what is being said. Now obviously if I am reading too far into it and I'm wrong, I'll admit it. I was wrong. However, this is how I believe that Alexis Ness could become a prominent character again. The current thing limiting Ness's potential and abilities as a playmaker is his trauma and attachment to Kaiser, and the moment that Kaiser shattered his attachment was when his appearances and performances began to dwindle. However, the answer to Ness is actually the same thing that's been pushed in the latest 2 games of the NEL, that being the return to zero. Within Blue Lock, each player has been drastically developing and awakening their ego, and we see that despite this rapid evolution, the biggest impact on the players was actually their return to zero. Kaiser, Isagi, and Rain, the 3 biggest players in this match, have all been impacted by this decision, allowing for each player to surpass their previous selves. This would apply to Ness as well. Despite Kaiser not overcoming his trauma, he has actually been able to use it to further his development and skills as a player. Ness could realistically do the same thing. By returning to zero, Ness could come to the realization that while Kaiser was someone he could share his dream with, Ness never truly needed to share his dream with anyone. His original reason and passion for playing simply came from the magic the players could create on their own. This is why Kaiser told Ness to quit, because it's going to put him back in that zero mindset that his family first put him in when he discovered the sport. Kaiser is telling Ness that if all he's going to be is dependent on his presence as a reason for playing, then he should realistically just give up. Further proof of Ness's future evolution comes from the statements made by Yukimiya and Isagi. Yukimiya says, "You need to change your perception. Right now on this field, the people who don't follow the speedy evolution brought by Isagi and Kaiser will get left behind." Isagi also says, "This is a death game of natural selection, and you're on the verge of extinction." They're both telling Ness that if he does not awaken and he does not evolve to keep up with them, he is going to be left behind. This hints towards a Ness evolution and a Ness awakening. Falling back to the interview, the mangakas did say that Ness is not going to have any more impact on the game. They say Ness, as in the Ness that we know of now, won't have any more impact on the game. However, if he returns to zero and awakens, he will become a new version of himself, a description given to numerous characters during an awakening. If you want a further piece of evidence, take the moment between Ness and Kaiser when Kaiser is getting his hair cut. "Hey Ness, I used to be a weak-hearted person. Huh? I kept losing to impossibility over and over again, so I decided to never go back to the past. As a warning to myself, I got this blue rose tattoo. Oh, I see. It symbolized impossibility, or that which doesn't exist. This artificially created hue is something that shouldn't be possible in nature. To me, this rose is a symbol of making the impossible possible and a rebellion against God. I want to become something that shouldn't be possible in this world. Does this not seem to describe Ness currently, and how an evolution back to zero could revive his importance in the story? Ness has continuously lost over and over again. This impossibility in Ness's case was the irrational devotion to Kaiser, jeopardizing the team with his plays. Rather than getting a blue rose tattoo, Ness will instead make a statement to himself by challenging his devotion with the original magic that fueled his ego in the first place. This play by Ness is a rebellion against God, or in this case, God's chosen emperor, who told him to quit football. This could lead Ness to scoring the final goal as opposed to assisting. Seen with his backstory, as Ness was originally a goal scorer prior to trying out for Bayern München, where he met Kaiser. This play would let Ness begin to slowly process his trauma, with him now being the one to fully abandon their partnership for the sake of his own ego and true desire, to cast a spell on the entire world. But that was simply my breakdown of Alexis Ness and the story, as well as my explanation of the impact he could have moving forward. Now, obviously what I'm predicting in this video could be wrong, so if I am wrong, then I admit it, I was wrong. But aside from that, I hope you guys did enjoy this video and will continue to enjoy it in the future. As for the question of the video, what do you think of Alexis Ness after this video? Do you still find this character annoying, or do you think that he may actually be a well-developed player? Leave me your thoughts down below in the comment section. And like always, thank you all for watching, like and subscribe to see more awesome Blue Lock content just like this.